Next up, we've got the pleasure of hearing about some of those projects listed and a few others in a bit more detail. And as part of a panel session that we'll look at some of the major developments that have come online in Western Sydney over the past 12 months and how they've helped reframe the public view on infrastructure investment and what it all means. It's fair to say that outside of their respective facilities, services, buildings and links, what these projects have delivered is a confidence that as Sydney-siders, we can endure a little bit of disruption, a little bit of uncertainty and a little bit of inconvenience and come out the other side okay. The real value these projects represent is the change they've made in our lives. Yes, they're important economic stimulants, but they also impact our well-being. And that's something that can be hard to quantify. It can't be judged solely by numbers or by looking at lines on a map. Sometimes it just has to be experienced. Those in Western Sydney who now get to spend more time with their families because of shorter work commutes, have access to better jobs and first-class healthcare, have felt the excitement and joy of watching the Eels win. Yes, it does happen. But for all of these people, they're all starting to experience and feel the real gains that come with infrastructure investment. And that's something we should celebrate. To hear more about these projects, I'd like to call to the stage Daryl Kerry, CEO of VenuesL, Richard Alcock, Chairman of Western Sydney Local Health District, Rebecca McPhee, Deputy Chief Executive of Sydney Metro, Andrew Head, CEO of WestConnex, and Mark Webster, Managing Director of Inglis. Some impressive projects there, guys. Well done. Daryl, I'm going to start with you. Bankwest getting a lot of attention, and they say that a week is a long time in politics. Well, 12 months must seem an age. This time last year we were talking, or we're smack bang in the middle of Stadia Wars. Sitting here now, and the public narrative around investment in sporting and events infrastructure has certainly come a long way. The arrival of Bankwest has obviously played a big role in reshaping that narrative. Have you been surprised by the level of response, the positive response that Bankwest has received, and what do you put it down to?
Thanks, Adam, and thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit of the story behind the stadium. I suppose, is it a surprise? I don't think it's a surprise at all. I think my experience on these types of projects, and I think most of the projects that are represented here, when you're investing a lot of money and it takes a while and there's an element of disruption, etc., I mean, that doesn't always go down well. But the experience generally is, if you do it well and the product's great, everyone loves it in the end. And I think Bankwest Stadium is probably the best example of that, maybe across the projects. Whilst it was a lot of money, but nowhere near as much money as the government has spent on sort of other projects. But they've got a lot of stadium for the money they spent. The people involved in the project did an incredible job of designing something that fans would love. So the real testament to the government for sticking at this project in particular, because the whole stadium investment strategy has been, it got its fair amount of attention over the last sort of 5 years. But this is a stadium that I think everyone should be very proud of, and particularly the western section of Sydney. But it's world class. It was really built around the fan. So the designers, the builders, Populous designed it. Lendlease did a terrific job of building the stadium. Venues New South Wales, who own the stadium on behalf of the government, and the board and the executive did a fantastic job of working through the whole process of getting it to this point. And our organisation was lucky enough to be appointed to operate it, and we loved every minute of it. And the minute you walk into the stadium with the open concourses, it's just a great fun stadium. There's some great technology in there, and it's really just completely recalibrated what going to an event can be like in Sydney. And I think that was maybe one of the things that got lost in the whole stadium debate, is that, yep, it's an investment, absolutely, but probably stadiums, unlike hospitals and transport projects, etc., stadiums are about having some fun. It's about, culture, lifestyle. It's about, kids, having access to see their heroes, their sporting heroes. It says a whole lot about, what the community can do. And I think it's a great project and a great example of what, good investment can actually produce.
We've still got a couple more stadiums to come. Chances of revisiting the whole stadium debate, you think it's long gone, dead, buried, cremated?
Well, I'd like to think, anytime the governments put up major projects and investment and spending people's public money is an incredibly responsible thing that you need to do. But I think Bankwest and what it's been able to deliver in 6 months, and having watched the whole debate, and the minute that people could get access to the stadium, we were fortunate enough to be able to do a community event 14 days after sort of the stadium was handed over. And it was a free community event, and the minute the people walked in, the whole narrative around the investment and the reasoning and the logic just changed completely. And it was fantastic to see. And it just, you saw earlier just some of the footage of mums and dads and kids and, grandmothers and what have you, just, walking in and being blown away by how good it was. So I hope that the rest of the stadium project investment strategy continues, because I think what has been demonstrated, absolutely clearly in the case of Bankwest Stadium is that if you get the right people involved and you do a good job of it, people will love it in the end. And it'll add something to Sydney. There's a lot of very important projects around, schools and hospitals and, motorways, etc. But I think stadiums are just one example where it can inject a little bit of fun into people's lives, and it gives somewhere for people to go and enjoy themselves.
I've not heard a bad thing about it. So certainly in terms of the positivity it's been able to generate, I think holds the future of stadium investment in good stead. Andrew, I want to throw to you, much like Bankwest, WestConnex has had its fair share of media, not all of it good, but the opening of the M4 tunnels was really our first taste of what this project can be about. And it's been well received by motorists, more stages on the way. How important was this initial stage in terms of being able to set the tone for what's to come?
Yeah, well, everybody knows that the delivery of WestConnex has been really hard. Lots of disruption, particularly in that first instance through that M4 corridor. Hopefully a lot of the people who are in this room travelled from Western Sydney through those tunnels tonight. If they did, they saved 20 minutes on the way home. They'll save another 40. So you're saving an hour on a round trip. That's a game changer, and it gives you a window into what WestConnex is going to be all about. It's really only about a fifth of the way done. So we've got a long way to go, but you get a taste through those M4 tunnels. The other great thing about WestConnex and this first piece of the project coming online is that there's great benefits being seen on Parramatta Road. So the free route is better as well, which is good for those people who don't want to take a toll road. The local community is having some of those construction sites returned as parks. Community amenity is being improved. We've had opening events for parks where thousands of people have come along and had a really good time in their new local park, which is fantastic. And we're seeing the early signs on the data of what's happening to the air quality in the area. So still to be proven up, still to finish off the science, but what we're seeing is that the investment in the ventilation, having vehicles travelling through that corridor without stopping and starting, less trucks on Parramatta Road, is not only improving the local amenity via less vehicles on the local streets, but it's also improving the air quality. So I think the story of WestConnex is starting to come together. Hats off to the people who were involved from the start. I think I saw Tony Shepherd here earlier. Those people did the hard yards, and now we have a bit of an indication as to what's to come when that whole project comes together.
You made a point earlier when we spoke about the importance of having communities and stakeholders and buy into a vision. It's a little bit hard with a road project to be able to sell that vision. We're seeing the vision of Bankwest now. It's a lot easier to see. How do you get that level of buy-in, and how important is to be able to articulate a really strong vision up front?
Look, I think it's really important for groups like this, the people who are on this stage, to get together and talk about how we collectively are coming together with these projects and changing the fabric of a place like Western Sydney. So Western Sydney's mobility is going to improve via metro, via better roads. Western Sydney's cultural amenity and its sporting amenity is going to improve through Bankwest, through the investment in the powerhouse, improving in racing facilities, you name it. It's all happening. It all comes together. And I think there's a really important role for all of us in this room to help the government articulate the agenda, to articulate the benefits and celebrate them when they come online. Because unfortunately in this day and age, the minority has a very loud voice. So it's up to us as a group to get together and articulate what's happening out there, because it's really going to make Sydney a great place. We're on the doorstep of the nation's capital. We have wonderful intellectual capital being developed in our universities. We've got new airports which are going to improve our connectivity to Asia. It's all there in front of us, and it's important for us to articulate that vision alongside the governments that are delivering this infrastructure program.
Indeed. Speaking of visionaries, Mr. Richard Alcock, tell us about Blacktown Hospital. Delivered new facilities and spaces, but I suppose what's different about this project is the focus on design and with an eye to the future of healthcare. Talk us through the upgrade and the need for hospitals to probably think a little bit differently, and the importance of innovation when it comes to these types of builds.
Well, certainly health infrastructure absolutely hit the ball out of the park in really coming up with a concept and bringing the community into the process of designing this facility. It is the community's hospital, paid for by our government. The level of ownership that the community feels as a result of the work that was done in the design. There were in the order of 25,000 individual episodes of engagement that health infrastructure and the team at Blacktown Hospital led to really draw in the best ideas about how to deliver future healthcare. And if you can imagine Blacktown Hospital as the 5th largest hospital in the state in the foreseeable future, up there with the majors that have been providing comprehensive care for decades and decades. As you all know, Blacktown is the fastest growing LGA. It's one of the youngest LGAs. The births that we've delivered in the hospital since the opening have been up 10% on the last year, and it's a real it's a great community facility, and we get huge amount of interest. We've got a very, very vibrant arts and culture program. I think we've had in excess of 20 different programs, so that the hospital business is now the health and wellbeing business. And the other thing that health infrastructure, in engagement with our clinicians and all of our team at the Blacktown Hospital, was how to conceptualise and then provide facilities for the delivery of a different form of healthcare in the future. A form of healthcare which is much out of the hospital in outpatient mode as in inpatient mode, with our partners in health, our consumers feeling very actively engaged in their own healthcare, with the Blacktown Hospital as an enabler of a much richer and broader healthcare experience.
And obviously we've talked about the impact that the hospital is having in terms of clinical services, but often when we talk about health and education precincts in Western Sydney particularly, we talk, Westmead, Liverpool, Campbelltown and growingly Blacktown, Mount Druitt, but they're also key economic drivers. We're seeing more and more the opportunities that come from the urban renewal opportunities, the job opportunities. Talk us through your vision for not just Westmead, but the rest of the hospitals in terms of forming an identity around health and innovation and education.
Well, if anyone's been to Blacktown recently, you can see the investment that the hospital sits within, a very substantial investment that the Blacktown City Council is making in partnership with the state government. We see our role as being partners in many different aspects of delivery. We also see transport, a healthy and exercise-focused lifestyle to get ahead of some of the more chronic and complex conditions that our society faces. And ultimately, it's about the whole of person, driven through employment, education, physical exercise, diet, all of the attributes that predetermine people's health outcomes.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, if we can please just remain a little bit quiet and respectful for the guys up on stage while they finish their discussion. Rebecca, biggest infrastructure project delivered this year. Sets a new standard when it comes to rail, but getting one of Sydney's most complex projects to this point hasn't been without its challenges. It dates back a long time, both in terms of construction and, I suppose, securing political and public support. What were some of those challenges you had to overcome, and how has, in your mind, North West Metro revolutionised public transport in Sydney?
That's a lot of questions, Adam. Thank you. So thanks for recognising, it has been delivering a whole new railway system is a huge task and a very complex one at that. And the team did face some real challenges during construction, but what was really pleasing was seeing the team work hand in hand with our delivery partners to collaboratively come back from that and deliver the metro on time and under budget. And the launch of Australia's first fully automated passenger railway on the 26th of May this year was a huge achievement by the team, and something that a lot of the community actually got behind, and we're extremely pleased to see no less than the 140,000 people that turned up on the day to try the new metro for the first time. So I think...
Yeah, are we at 11 million in the first 5 months?
11 million in the first 6 months, yep. 46,000 services delivered. So again, I think, someone talked about a turning point. When we opened that first metro, we saw a huge turning point, and 11 million customer journeys. Our customers are telling us they love the service. 95% customer satisfaction in our first survey this year, which is hugely pleasing.
And the rest of the project, obviously this is just similar to WestConnex, the first stage. What comes next, and do you foresee any other challenges? We're hearing that there's some funds that need to be secured, potentially for Metro West especially. Where do we go? What comes next?
Yeah, there's a huge amount next, and I think if I'll just talk for a little bit longer about Metro North West, because I think the subject of this panel was after the ribbon was cut, and we've still got a huge amount of work to do on Metro North West, because we recognise that we've got a commitment to deliver excellent customer outcomes, not just for our customers, but for the communities as well in which we operate. And we're working hand in hand with Lancom, our delivery partner, on the North West Places programme, which is the programme by which we are seeking to really capitalise on that investment to deliver those excellent economic, sustainability, social outcomes that delivering great places achieves, as well as great transport services that connect people really well. And that Metro Places programme will deliver up to 11,000 additional dwellings along that alignment. So in terms of what next for metros, by 2024 we will have 66 kilometres of metro railway serving 31 stations right through the CBD via Sydenham to Bankstown. That will continue to deliver those high-frequency services right through the city. After that, so we're going to start construction next year on Sydney Metro West, which will link the central city, Parramatta and Westmead, through to the eastern CBD with a target journey time of just 20 minutes. And that's going to take an enormous amount of pressure off the existing rail network, but also support the growth that we're already envisaging. I mean, I think we're forecasting an additional 300,000 jobs in that corridor between now and 2036. So that new Metro West railway is really required to support that. I'm not finished yet. Then we've got the Greater West Railway, locally known as the North-South Rail Link, which will service the new Western Sydney International Nancy Bird Walton Airport. And that will travel initially, stage 1 is what we're talking about at the moment, from St Mary's down to the Aerotropolis, but we're already planning stages 2 and 3 of that. And that link will really support the generations to come, development for generations to come in Western Sydney.
We all eagerly await that Greater West business case. Any tips on when we can expect that?
We are tracking absolutely to plan to complete that business case in the coming months.
Great. Guys, we are going to have a bit of a break after this panel to network and chat, so if you can please remain a little bit quiet while we finish this. We'll be finished very shortly, I promise. Mark, winner of the 2018 Project of the Year in a region that is short of high-quality, world-class hotels. When you decided to establish the Riverside Stables and William Inglis Hotel at Warwick Farm, it probably took a few people by surprise, but it's been nearly 2 years now since you've opened, and the move has certainly paid dividends, pardon the pun. Why has it been so successful? What sort of drove you to invest in Warwick Farm and that precinct, and how do you see, or what do you see in terms of the potential of Western Sydney as a destination for hospitality and tourism?
Thank you, Adam. What I would say, and to people at the back of the room, if you can't hear, I'll speak up a little bit. I hope that's not too impolite. Thank you. Look, my first message to people in the room as an investor in Western Sydney is don't underestimate the people of Western Sydney. Don't underestimate the opportunity in Western Sydney, and be brave. And sometimes you can pay consultants to give you advice about whether you do this or do that. One example would be we were cautioned about launching our hotel in Western Sydney as a 5-star hotel. We were told a luxury hotel of that kind wouldn't survive in Western Sydney. Nobody's got money out there. No one will want to hold a corporate event or a conference out there. Well, look, we're not even at 2 years yet, but we've had 1,054 corporate events at the hotel, which we're very proud of. We have had 53,000 room nights of guests staying in the hotel. We've helped with the growing Australia's population. We've had 192 weddings and a few christenings. We were told that moving our business from Randwick, where we'd operated for 100 years, selling great horses like Black Caviar and Might and Power, and of course Vow and Declare that won the Melbourne Cup this year. We were told if we moved that from Randwick to Western Sydney, the international clients and the local wealthy clients wouldn't want to go. They'd need to take armed security guards with them to Western Sydney. Well, look, that didn't happen. In our first year, we held record sales. We set several world records for selling horses in Western Sydney. So I would just say to people in the room that are investors, take the advice, but do what you think is right and seize the opportunity in Western Sydney. And obviously, we're very committed to it. We now have a profitable hotel. Our horse business is going very well, and we're very proud of what we've built.
We've got a new airport coming in about 7 years. When we talk about the opportunities of that airport, we often cite opportunities around industry and advanced manufacturing, around that precinct, around the Aerotropolis. We don't always talk about the opportunities in tourism and what that might deliver. You're living, breathing proof of what can be achieved. What would your message be to others who are potentially looking at investing in tourism hospitality space in Western Sydney?
Well, I'd encourage them to do so. We don't want to be there on our own, so to speak, and there are some other quality hotels in the area. And I have to say that our hotel quite often for big events gets booked out. So we have directed a lot of business to nearby hotels that have benefited from us being in the area. So when we run a big conference, we shuttle people into a whole lot of nearby hotels, which shows there is demand outside of what we're doing. We took a view when we were moving to Western Sydney, and bear in mind I am a Westie, I've grown up in Western Sydney, is that it's not actually, Liverpool is not Western Sydney, it's actually the centre of the new Sydney. And Malcolm Turnbull did come to our venue for an Aerotropolis event, and he did repeat that quote and acknowledge it. And I still believe it's true. There's a new Western Sydney Aerotropolis being developed 20 kilometres to our west. The current airport is 20 kilometres to our east. Parramatta is 10 kilometres, and the CBD is only sort of 25 to 30 kilometres. So we are in the middle. And I think there's a lot of opportunity with the improvements, particularly in transport links in Western Sydney. And, there's some people up here with me that are ensuring that those developments are taking place on time and to a certain standard. And if that continues, I'm very positive about tourism developing. It's great to have on our table here the not the Taronga Zoo. That's a bit of a slip, isn't it?
Mention that one.
The new Taronga Zoo or the new Sydney Zoo. The one that's more accessible, perhaps I should say, to the greater population of Sydney. Great to have investments of that kind going on, and I think we can all leverage off each other. We need to find ways to network and support each other.
You mentioned the word courage earlier, and I suppose for all of you, and I want to get a response from all of you around the level of influence and persuasion that's required to get some of these projects across the line, both internally and in the face of some of the political stuff that you guys have to manage. How much of an impact does it have, and how important is it to be able to persuade and influence the right people to get these projects over the line? Mark?
Yeah, sure. Well, it takes a lot of work and energy, and if you don't believe in your own project, it's going to be hard to convince everybody else. So you have to be persuasive. We work with Liverpool Council. I don't know if there's anybody in the room from Liverpool Council, but geez, they're very progressive in supporting development in their area, so I give them due credit at officer level and councillor level. State government, Stuart Ayres is here in the room. Stuart did, this is themed after cutting the ribbon, but Stuart did come out and cut the ribbon. So we thank you, Minister Ayres, for doing that and showing support. And Stuart, helped in a number of ways when we needed infrastructure support, whether it be trying to get the gas connected down the main street or getting water connected. There's a lot of obstacles when you're developing in these areas, and you need support of other people to get things over the line. And we've still got a long way to go in Western Sydney. There's a lot of opportunity, but I think we're off to a great start. I would really like to see, as someone who lives out in Western Sydney with a couple of daughters who have to get to the city quite often, is more investment in things like safe car parking around train stations and the new transport hubs. The more car parking we have, so that we can put our daughters onto trains and feel safe about them getting back to their cars and things like that, they're things that will take us to another level, which we're not quite there yet in fulfilling all those needs.
Daryl?
I think it's a case of, industries and business need to work together, and I think one of the things that I think sometimes gets in the road of these things is that, short-term pain, and they can become political issues. The reality is all of the infrastructure we're talking about, it changes cities and changes people's lives, and I sort of feel like we're going through a period now of it almost feels like the norm. We're spending all this money in this great infrastructure, where the reality is that's not true. So I think we need to be careful we don't just all fall into the trap of, well, this is normal, because I don't think it is normal. But if you manage things well and you plan things well and you aim high, I think you can get the community on side. But I think industry and business need to lead that and try to prevent it sort of being dragged down into sort of a quite narrow sort of discussion. These things cost lots of money, but they change lives, they change cities, and ultimately I think there's just there's some great examples here of how you can improve communities, and both from a workplace or a place to live or a place to to go and enjoy. So we've all got a responsibility to make sure that these things don't get dragged down into sort of one-dimensional sort of debates, because that doesn't help anyone.
Andrew?
When it comes to putting forward ideas for new projects, I think where I've seen the projects that have been really successful and proceed, the proponent is putting forward a solution that it doesn't only just work for themselves, but it also works for the government, the community, the user, the customer. WestConnex is a classic example of that. That project is going to come online next year. It's a fabulous tunnel that's going to open up the northwest of Sydney, open up the Central Coast. It's going to be delivered 10 years earlier than it might have been otherwise, as a consequence of an unsolicited proposal that worked for all the parties who were involved in assessing it, proposing it, etc. Then when we get to the delivery phase, I think it's really important to be empathetic, respectful, engage with the community with the right tone, and that sets us up for a long-term sustainable pipeline. So in relation to WestConnex, we're always looking for micro-engagement opportunities. Most recently, we've been tunnelling under some people's houses. They've been a little bit worried about that. We've taken them down into the tunnel. We've shown them what we're doing. We're being transparent, and it alleviates that concern. We've got others who are potentially concerned about ventilation. We take them into the control room. We show them the ventilation outlets and how they're being managed, the air quality, the improvement in the air quality. Transparency relieves some of that community angst. So proposing good projects that work for everybody, not just yourself, and then delivering them well and respectfully, I think is the key to continued success.
Rebecca, obviously your boss, Rod Staples, was one of the longest serving champions for Northwest. Required quite a lot of political and public influence to be able to get that over the line. From your end, what do you see as sort of the main elements needed within that process to be able to get the message to the right people and get it heard and get them on board?
So, do you know what? And I'm fairly certain Rod would say the same as me if he were up here on the stage. It's to agree with my colleagues. It's actually about engaging with the community and selling the benefits to the community of what we are doing and what the investment the government is putting into Metro will deliver for their communities. And I think in that, it's really important to note that something like a metro, along the length of that alignment, we've got a lot of very different communities, very different customers with very different needs, and we need to genuinely go and engage with each of those communities and tailor our product, our service, to meet their individual needs and really listen and make changes. So on Northwest, for instance, we actually added 2 stations as well as 1,000 additional car parking spaces off the back of community feedback.
Guys, I've got one more question, and I promise you can network and chat as much as you like. Thank you. I'm going to end with one question to all. We've talked about funding and know that it's not a finite supply of funds left to fuel the next wave of infrastructure pipeline projects. With speculation that the New South Wales government may or may not sell off the remaining share of WestConnex to help subsidise some of these costs. If you're a Premier for the day, and I don't know if she's here yet, but if you're the Premier for the day, where would you tip those funds into? Richard?
Every aspect of giving the citizens of the state a great outcome. It's about a physical, it's about an educational, it's about great transport, it's about great leisure and entertainment. All of those aspects actually predetermine what happens when you come to one of our acute facilities. So it's everything. You know, it's a holistic approach to what actually drives a happy and healthy lifestyle.
Rebecca?
Oh, look, there's only one answer I can give to that question, and I think we may even have put it in one of our pictures on the maps we showed. Metro Greater West Stage 1 is just the start of our plans for Metro.
Sounds like you've got some support. Andrew?
Well, I'll probably just focus, given my role, on trying to create the most amount of value for the shareholders, which includes the 49% owned by the state of New South Wales. If they do choose to sell it, it'll be another great example of what asset recycling can do. So the money came from poles and wires and other assets like that. It's gone into assets like WestConnex. Hopefully the management team of WestConnex can create some value, and then if the government decides to sell it and apply it to the next big thing, then all power to them. I think it's a fantastic policy, and it's one that's going to ensure that Sydney continues to be the great city that has the potential to be.
Right. Daryl? another stadium?
I think if the what a lot of this has demonstrated over the last number of years is that if you're smart and you're economically sound and you have a bit of a vision, you can recycle assets well and you can spend that money well. And I suppose speaking maybe a little more personally, Bankwest is one of 3 stadiums that the government has earmarked for development. There's 2 more to go, and I would absolutely be a fan of continue to recycle assets that can produce significant funds to keep investing in sort of real game-changing infrastructure, because I think we're playing a bit of catch-up here on a lot of these projects, and it's now getting to a point where hopefully the community can see the real benefits of what these types of projects can do. So hopefully the government absolutely sticks to its strategy of continuing down this sort of stadium network redevelopment and do it and aim high and spend whatever it takes to make these world class.
Mark, final word?
Okay, so I would say, as someone who's grown up in Western Sydney that's had to travel all my life to get to work, invest in infrastructure facilities or creating jobs in Western Sydney so that people don't have to commute any more than 30 minutes from where they live. That way we won't be put as much of a strain on the transport links that are going in. So that investment in job creation and infrastructure, but also facilities that people need so they don't have to go to the city to go to a good hospital, and that work is underway. And equally, they don't have to go to the city for quality entertainment on the weekends. Just keep people closer to where they're comfortable and keep people off the roads as much as possible. That's what I would be investing in.
Smart move. Mark, Daryl, Andrew, Rebecca, Richard, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on your great project.